Okay, we might get started. We've got a few more people joining, and I think over the coming minutes, more will join. But welcome everyone to today's session. I'm Jess from the Pure team, and it's wonderful to have you all here. This is actually the first in a series of discussions we're going to be bringing you guys over the coming weeks and months. It's something that we've tried out over the last few months actually with the Pure Pursuit groups, and they've been really valuable. So we wanted to bring them to the wider Pure community as well. The aim of them is really to be able to dig deep into topics together in small discussion groups. It's a really valuable format, I think, and it allows you guys to really learn from each other and hear insights from people in different regions and in different areas of the industry. So they are quite valuable. And the topic today is a topic that has really come up since COVID started back in March. And it's all around, and it's come up quite a lot, and it's the topic of, is there a solution really to the booking process moving forward with so many different stakeholders involved at every single step of the way? It's a huge challenge, but we're hoping today in the breakout rooms that we will be able to perhaps get some ideas and be able to think about maybe in the future, you know, where we can go as an industry. So the format is going to be, I'm going to hand over to Daniel Brown, who most of you will know. He's a very familiar face for purists. He it has been for Pure and We Are Africa and Ellie Miami for many years from DM Africa. So he's going to do just a short intro for about 5 minutes, because he is someone that has you know, spoken quite a lot about this in the last few months in the conversations that we've had. Just to give the topic a little bit of context. We're then going to break out into some breakout rooms, which we will each be moderated by someone. So thank you for those of you who have volunteered to moderate. I'll introduce you guys after Daniel's finished. So the breakout rooms will last for half an hour, and there should be around, hopefully around 6 to 8 people in each room, depending how many we end up in the session. So those rooms will be for half an hour. You'll be in those rooms to discuss the topic. And then after that, the rooms will close and we'll all join back into this main room for hopefully about 15 minutes or 20 minutes at the end. And each of the moderators will have an opportunity to, for a few minutes, to really talk through the key insights that came from each of the rooms. So that's kind of how the format will work. As I mentioned before, if you just wouldn't mind putting yourselves on mute if you aren't already, just to avoid any background noise. And I would like to hand over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Jessica. That's great. Well, on behalf of everyone from the Pure community, I'm very privileged to be here today and chat to you good folks. And as most of you also have been through over the last few months, we've had a lot of time where we can actually look at the industry, take time, take breath, take stock of how our industry is reacted to this global pandemic, which has affected all of us. There's been so many discussions on what the trends are, what the new normal is. Probably my pet hate word is, what is the new normal? I think as an industry, we've had a lot of discussions on this. And I think as Jessica said, and as the Pure team have said, is that we need to look forward as an industry now, what are takeouts from all of these multitude of discussions we've all had and opinions that have been floated around by many different facets of our business. So I think that's the sort of crux of where we are now. I think we're all ready to look at getting through we're all seeing green shoots of recovery, or hopefully that's what we're optimistic about. And also, I think there's a greater understanding and empathy regarding the channels that we're all involved with. At the beginning of this process, I saw a lot of WhatsApp groups and chat rooms, and where people were saying, you know, it's not fair that DMCs are doing this, or it's not fair that suppliers are doing that. Agents were in combative mood with certain facets of the channels. And my view was that as an industry, we need to see things collectively as opposed to a them and us situation, which I think at the beginning was very much prevalent. And I think we've all sort of tempered our views on things and looked at everybody with empathy and the way that things have hurt everybody down the process. So I think that's something I've taken out of it, because we've all been sort of looking inwardly at how this situation has affected us as an industry, as opposed to how can we all help each other? Because let's be honest, such a pandemic or such a situation could and will probably arise again. And, you know, waiting in the corner, there's lots of other global issues that are upon us, from climate change, et cetera, which will have ramifications down the line for all of us, not just a virus that hopefully will have a vaccine soon, which will take away a lot of the worries everyone has. I was looking at, as I said, time to breathe and take stock, and understand our value as an industry as well, because I think I've always said it to a few people that as an industry, I feel that often we're undervalued as a business, seen as a hobbyist business, seen as a lifestyle business, from different facets of the channels. And I'm thinking that more to do with the end consumer, thinking, what the travel industry is, and the whole precedent down to how to value our industry going forward. The core, is loyalty and service more important than price and transparency, in terms of, at the moment, the industry is looking often at what price I can get, as opposed to what price is for service. And I think service-driven aspect of the business needs to be looked at. Obviously, the sort of takeouts from a lot of discussions I've had have been things like, flexibility with terms from the channels, from the supplier point of view, from the buyer point of view, and from the DMC point of view. How do you make terms flexible, especially going forward? Not to say that for an industry we need these terms to be forever flexible, but I think to kickstart the industry again, we sort of need an industry-wide set of terms, or something which is a little bit more easy to understand and fathom. Because if we find it hard, you can be sure that the actual clientele is finding it equally as hard. And then things like, questions I've seen, quotes, why travel rather than where to travel? The question is, why did you want to travel, as opposed to, where you want to go? So a lot more people are asking about, am I choosing to travel for the right reasons, rather than just a tick item? And also, I think more collaboration between the channels as well. I think that, these Zoom collaborations have shown that we should be able to get on a call between your client, the DMC, and maybe the end consumer might want to talk to the GM on a call and say, I'm coming to your resort. Is there anything that you need from us that we can make your stay more enjoyable? Because I think one thing I have learned is bricks and mortar service is certainly come out to the forefront, as opposed to hiding behind a booking channel for a third-party engine that has no empathy at all attached to the service that we're trying to give now. Because let's be honest, we're all working for free for the last 3 months. So I think as an overall introduction, I think we need to sort of look at it. And then I think the breakout rooms will give us a chance to equate what we've learned. And also, is there such a thing as an industry-wide or pure community-wide levy that we could charge going forward as a not opt-out levy, which allows us to actually look at a fund which we can have as a war chest, maybe 5 years time, 10 years time, with an independent arbitration, where you can say, this particular part of the business is struggling, and can we use this fund to help sustain the industry? Because let's be honest, we're having problems with a lot of people's ways of operating at the moment, and I think that's something to look at as well. It's a hard thing to administer, and maybe a discussion point can be had in the rooms about that. So that's it. So just wrapping up, I hope that gives an overview, and will get us cracking into the breakout rooms, Jess.
Great. Thanks so much, Daniel. So I've just been, the breakout rooms are just kind of randomly done. But we will be, as I mentioned, there will be a moderator in each of those. So I'm just going to call out the 6 moderators who will be moderating today. And thank you again to those who have volunteered. And those who have, but we won't be requiring the services of today. So the first is Daniel Brown, who you've just met. Nicole Robinson from And Beyond will be doing the next room. Then Raji Barij from Lentore is doing 1 room. Zach Rabinor from Journey Mexico is in the 4th room. Jonathan Rose from Touring Israel is in room 5. And then room 6 is Darren Humphreys from Travel Sommelier. So there are 6 rooms. I'll be about to open the rooms, and you'll have a note pop up on your screen and you can just join the room. Just a couple of points before we break out into the discussions. So just to keep in mind that we really want the discussion to be very solutions focused, as opposed to kind of getting bogged down into the now and the issues, so to speak. We really want to try and come up with solutions. So try to keep that in mind. When everyone is discussing in the group. You will automatically, so you'll be given half an hour, then you'll automatically, as I mentioned, come back into the main room, and that's when the moderators will go through and summarize their points to the wider group. So I'll open the rooms now. Please join your rooms and enjoy your discussions, everyone. The 60 seconds is up because here everyone comes. Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed their half an hour discussions. So we're going to go through the moderators now, for each of the moderators to try and summarize, I guess, a few kind of key insights from each of their rooms. If I can just remind everyone, if you're not already, just to pop yourselves back on mute, just to avoid any background noise. So we might start with Daniel and your room. Oh, and sorry, I should just say, because of time, we've got 6 rooms. So I think if you can try and keep it to about 3 minutes summary, okay. 3 or 4 minutes, just so that we don't run too much over the hour, that would be great.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Yeah, our room, we had a mix of DMCs, travel buyers, and we had obviously a very sort of informative conversation on the topic. The first thing that came out of it was Andrea from IC Bellagio and mentioned that a few in the Pure community had come up with a WTTC protocols in terms of how to initiate common practice within the industry for a set of guidelines and how to feel not alone in terms of how to handle this going forward, and how to have a stamp of approval in terms of knowing number of guidelines and protocols that can be set in place to help us through as an industry and have that sort of accredited on websites. And maybe as a Pure community, we endorse that as a sort of industry or community driven set of best practice codes. That was the first thing that was quite interesting. We then touched on the sort of the war chest angle of how we can have a fee or something that can be not opted out of, which could be sort of placed as a community, which gives us some sort of standing in the client's eyes, that they have some sort of industry-wide levy that we can attach to either help members of the travel community which are struggling in terms of regionalized pandemics, from a SARS, MERS or Ebola point of view, where people who have paid into the fee, let's say over 10 years, you can come back and you can ask for, I'm having trouble, our side of the world has been impacted by another coronavirus. Could we get some help and short-term liquidity or whatever? But it's a hard thing to administer. We wouldn't know how that could be transparently administered as for the community. That was one thing. We talked about, is it time now for putting forward the fact there should be no hesitation in asking for fees from a DMC point of view, from an agent point of view. Is it the right time to say the industry needs to have fees for generating our services, and could that be instigated across the board? And then we talked about the need for whether there is time to actually give the clients less feeling of entitlement, whereas the industry is so geared towards deals and special offers, and clients are feeling that there's a feeling of entitlement that they can always sniff out a deal. And should we say, you know what, the industry is going to be much tougher, there's a lot more regulations in place, and the prices are the prices, and that's it. So that was one thing we discussed. And then to have a core value to our businesses, to feel that we can justify the fact that we are bricks and mortar businesses as opposed to third-party booking engines, where there certainly hasn't been the level of service that we've given that from that area of the industry. So by default, do we automatically give the service to people without necessarily charging for it. So that was sort of the main takeouts we had from our group.
Thanks, Daniel. Very interesting points there. I might go next to Nicole and your room. If you can unmute yourself.
Sure, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I think 30 minutes went really, really fast, and there were probably more questions than answers, but some interesting questions. And I think if we follow those good questions, we might lead up with good solutions. So I guess it started off with Anita just mentioning that the biggest question is, can we change the whole booking process and deposits, and should they be refundable, and should suppliers be using guest deposits in their operating cash flow, which is a interesting question, and I know it's one that we've all plagued with. That led us sort of into whether escrows were the answer, or whether there is perhaps the need for a technology supplier to step in with perhaps a more efficient system to see if that could be possible. I guess similar to the war chest fund that Daniel was speaking about, the administration and the process and who gets money out and when makes that all quite tricky. We had a discussion around, I guess, just the various types of costs that make up the travel sort of supply chain, the opportunity cost of the supplier with small inventories. A lot of our suppliers are boutique properties with small inventories, and so there's the opportunity cost. I guess there's a lot of a lot of us purists have a sustainability ethos, and it's the fixed cost of ensuring the stage of experiences that we deliver. It's, I guess, what we sell is more than just a bed, and the cost of ensuring that stage is there is one that happens whether there's guests or no guests, and so it's how do you honor that. Then there's the actual cost of the transfer, the bed, the actual accommodation when the guest is in-house, which obviously should be only should be refunded if the guest doesn't come. And then there's the cost of the travel planning, and that like Daniel says, he's worked 3 months for no revenue. He's probably sometimes might rebook somebody 3 times and have to wait 18 months for that revenue to come in. And so we all sort of agreed a need for greater transparency in the booking process as to perhaps where those deposits go to and how we could do that. Also, perhaps a shared cancellation policy in specific groups that might make it easier to understand for the consumer. And then I guess the last 2 questions were around how do we clearly tell that sustainability story so that guests know sort of where their money's going and what it's paying for? And then how do you educate the consumer to not perhaps compare, it's like they're comparing apples and oranges. They're used to buying a lot of business travel, which is a commodity. You're buying a bed for a night to do a specific thing. How do you get them out of a different mindset when they're buying leisure travel? Which is really, really different and more around personal service and telemaking that Daniel also referenced. So those were the interesting questions.
Thanks so much, Nicole, and completely appreciate half an hour was quite optimistic for a topic like this, but I guess it does get initial thoughts together to discuss. So thank you for that. Over to you, Raji, who is in, I think, room 1. If you can unmute yourself, please.
Hi, just to echo Nicole, 30 minutes went very quickly. So I hope I can summarize these. Following on the topic being solution to the booking process, I'm going to try and, whilst a lot of these points might sound like soft points, I do believe that they will add to the value of solving this booking process. We had some really great input from our group. We had property owners, agents, and actually somebody in the PR world, which added an interesting perspective. One of the things that I'd like to put across that came from a few people was flexibility. Because we didn't have time to summarize, I'm taking some flexibility of my own to interpret it. But if I was going to say flexibility, the one thing that I'm also seeing as a property owner is, rather than putting out really strict terms and conditions and coming up with a solution that I hope will fit everybody, what I've gone out and told everyone is, look, you're all working with me. If you want a question or there's a specific booking, just get in touch and we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I've found that there is no one rule fits all, and that each scenario is different. And I think what everybody was putting across was there's flexibility from ask your property what's happening. As an agent, be as flexible as you can, obviously then communicating with the properties. And to bundle communication into that, I think one thing that also came across was more communication like we're having today would be valuable because we can all understand each other's perspectives. I think, sorry, it was Daniel that said earlier in terms of us all being on the same page. I believe that's really true. So flexibility and more communication, I think, would be very valuable at this time so that we're all on the same page. One other point that came up was focusing on seclusion and exclusivity. That came up with one of our members in the group, and I have to say that I agree with that. I think focusing on whatever exclusive booking products that you can, I think will stimulate bookings at this point in time. Standardization of rates, that's an incredibly big one to try and solve, but I'm a big supporter of that. How we actually achieve it with the number of properties across the world is difficult, but standardization of rates would definitely help the booking process because it would simplify the booking process. There was a very interesting proposal in terms of a solution that I think a gentleman called Simon had seen, which was pay more for that flexibility, where if you pay more, you actually get the ability to change your bookings at the last minute. And I think that's an interesting way to start stimulating bookings now, where pay a little bit more and you get X, Y, Z. I think there's something like that on planes where if you pay a bit more, you can change your seats at a different time and blah, blah, blah. So that might be a nice way to stimulate bookings at the moment. If I may, I didn't get a chance on our group to give my points. One thing that I think would work well, and I've done it from a property perspective, is one of the key things that guests around the world are worried about is the financial security of both the properties and the agents. They're all asking, are you guys going to exist in 2021 or 2022? One thing that I've done that has worked well for me, and if you guys can do it, I would suggest you do it, is go to your auditors and ask them to give you a liquidity statement. That liquidity statement is an incredibly powerful document where somebody writes to you and it's part of, I mean, we always like to send out quite sexy stuff in terms of all of our client reviews and blah, blah, blah. The time has actually come for us to send out audit reviews, which tells them how sexy our accounting is. So if you can, I would suggest you do that. It really works because the guests immediately go, right, let's talk to them about the sexy safari because they have really good accounting. So that's our input. And I'm going to end by saying, if I missed anything from my lovely group, I apologize. I wasn't expecting to be doing this today.
Thanks, Raji. Sorry, yes, I emailed you earlier and I think you thought it was next week. So I appreciate you stepping in at the last minute. And I think in terms of making your accounting look sexy, that's quite a good idea. So over to you, Zach, when you were in, I believe, room 5.
Sure. So jumping right in, just trying to get the takeaways. And we did kind of wander a little bit outside of the narrow booking process into just kind of learning overall, but I'll try to keep it focused. First of all, just communicate, speak to the end user. Also about fees and transparency were constant themes that everybody talked about. In addition, we talked a lot about trust and how over communication, you know, we're all learning the importance of over communicating at this time, just if only to remind people that we're actually still here and not going out of business, but that can be taken into the booking process as well, combined with transparency and fees can really smooth out the process. Technology as well, using technology to keep customers and in fact the entire value chain connected as to the process, the progress when bookings are happening, restaurant reservations are made, hotel bookings are made, and so on. Also, more talk about terms and conditions, flexibility, and trust. Very common themes coming back over and over again, staying close to our guests, and also utilizing, what we're learning through the last 90 days or so is about utilizing our teams and their skill sets, where there's more than just the narrow focus of the booking process, but rather bringing in multiple team members or having one team member do more than just a very narrow, a narrow task. Also, more about communication. Interestingly, the same type of technology that we're talking about to bring more transparency and closeness to the customer, we've found all of us, as we're doing right now, can bring us all closer to each other as an industry, but also, interestingly, within our own teams. So I'm sure all of us working from home, we're doing these all staff meetings and Zoom meetings, and we're realizing that we're actually in closer touch with people that we work right next to, working from our homes, because we're more scheduled about having all staffs or departmental meetings. And I've found that quite interesting as well, and how that can help as well with the booking process of keeping everybody on the same page and communicating closely and clearly. Yeah, I think that would sum it up.
Fantastic. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. Then we have Jonathan next, and then we'll finish off with Darren. So Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself.
Hi, everybody. So we had a nice mixed group of DMCs, hotels, resorts, and of course agents. It was, it's nice to get sort of the point of view of the other levels. In the pipeline. I think that the session itself must have been sponsored by the word flexibility, because that's the word that came up by far the most. And I think, flexibility in all areas. In other words, people have sympathy for, different people in the chain, in the pipeline, having to take booking fees and deposits. But the question is now, is that, it's like we need the deposits, but at the same time, we also just need the business. So, whether, I think what we decided is that, well, yes, we need to take deposits, but we need to make sure those deposits are obviously as low as humanly possible, or economically possible. Another thing was we spoke about luxury. I mean, we were all supposed to be luxury, we're all supposed to be luxury DMCs, luxury hotels, luxury travel agents. And we need to also sort of hold on a little bit and sort of not drop our standards below the luxury level. This is going to be a period where things are going to sort of be kind of Wild West. 5-star resorts are going to sort of separate the men from the boys, as it were. I'm sorry for the sexist language. You'll have your, like now what they're calling 7-star resorts, which will be the, that genuine 5-star, or what we used to call 5-star. And then, some of the other resorts or properties or whatever that used to call themselves 5-star are going to end up sort of what we consider to be sub 5-star. And, as the people, since we're supposed to represent the luxury, that we should be, we should maintain that luxury standard, stay up on the top level, not sort of drift down to that middle level. I think, it's all early days, as I said to my group. It's been 6 weeks, more, probably 2 months since since we've had a booking, since I've managed to take in a deposit. It's early days. Countries are still, some countries are opening up, but a lot of countries, and a lot of, like, for example, again, I'm from Israel. We rely on about 70% of our tourism, I'm guessing that figure, but it feels like that, is from the United States. In the United States, Israel's not going to allow Americans, which have had such a high level of corona, to come in for a long time. It's going to be a while, so we're going to have to do without, a lot of business for a long time. So early days still, but yeah, now's the time for us to find a good solution for moving forward. That's about it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate that. And last but definitely not least, Darren.
Thank you very much, Jess. So one thing I will say, and this will shape my feedback, is that this consistency of themes is quite staggering. Everything that everybody else has touched on came up in our group. So in the hope to not make things too redundant, I won't go over too much covered ground unless we've had a different take on it. Before I do begin, though, I will say, Raj, thank you very much. I never thought I would hear, and you learn everything on every Zoom call, I never thought I would hear that you can use the word sexy and accounting in the same phrase. So to my mind, that's, at least I've learned something today. So I think that the big thing that everybody is grappling with is we're in that twilight zone between the old booking terms and conditions and the new booking terms and conditions, whatever they turn out to be. So in Safari world, the old 2080 model is gone, and now it's been replaced by a complete spectrum of terms and conditions. And how we respond and react to that as the middlemen, I'm talking specifically from a Travel Sommelier seat, is rather difficult. So that set off a discussion on, do we charge service fees? And in our group, we had a very lively discussion about that. We had people who, in one instance, a gentleman has one client pretty much only, a world-renowned family, very high profile, who, believe it or not, would not favor a service fee, would probably walk away from the business he does with without a service fee. Right across the board to another travel sommelier-esque type travel designer who said, we are starting to look at imposing a service fee on a very transparent basis. And we're going to do that just like they did in the old line, airline booking. It becomes airlines, it becomes standard and you pay a booking fee. And there are pros and cons, obviously, to that model. And that might stick beyond this twilight period we're in, and it might have some legs beyond the 6 to 12 to 18 months during which COVID is the prevalent backdrop. So that was very much a discussion. The second was about how channels have operated within the vertical. Have we found that people have stood shoulder to shoulder? Travel designers, DMCs, and suppliers, or have there been much fractious behavior? And the good news is it appears as though everybody has been very reasonable. Everybody has communicated. But there is a realization that there's never a perfect nexus between legal, ethical, and commercial interests. They all sort of differ. And Nigel, who's the president of ATA, the African Trade and Tourism Association, was the only tourism president in our group. And he made a very good point. He said, our members are in some instances at war. And a lot of it is around the various political/government regulations that are in place that govern their home markets. So they might want to do the right thing by the supply channel, but they are legally required to do something else by their prevailing legislature for their clients. And so lobbying governments and explaining to them how our business is structured, our industry structured, and how the vertical works was a key thing. So I thought that is something we should all consider, I believe, is, how do we approach these government entities or, going forward. And then the final discussion that we had, which hasn't been brought up here, which I think is important to throw into the mix, is that throughout this whole situation, to our mind, the travel insurance industry's got off scot-free. Very few of our end clients, and this seems to be the experience for most people, have been able to claim in any shape or format through their travel insurance provider for a cancelled trip. And what that's meant is it's put the burden upon the entire vertical. And going forward, I think it does make sense to determine which suppliers are going to provide policies that will cover pandemics, in this instance COVID, or something more broadly. Because that obviously will affect the terms and conditions that we are able to offer clients, the type of flexibility that we're able to offer clients, and what fees we might have. So that in a wrap is us. Thanks very much for the opportunity, and good to see everybody.
Thanks so much, Darren. I think you've touched on an important point there around insurance, which is probably another 2-hour discussion. So we'll leave that one for next time. Sorry guys, we have run over slightly, but I think that was quite valuable, just letting the moderators talk through their key insights. So thank you very much for all of you for joining us today, and a special shout out obviously to Daniel for introducing it at the beginning, and also our moderators, Daniel, Nicole, Raj, Zach, Jonathan, and Darren. So thank you all so much for your time. Please keep an eye on your inbox. So we will be writing up the notes from today's session plus the recording. It should hit your inbox early next week. So keep an eye on that. Please, if you've all got my email, you should have it all. Please do send any feedback, negative, positive, whatever, because we are, wanting to bring more of these to you guys. So if there's, any feedback, if you think the sessions should be longer or anything, please do let me know so that we can try to make them as valuable for you guys as possible. Also, just quickly, hopefully you saw the email yesterday that was promoting this, just about our Pure Night In on Friday at 4 o'clock London time. If you are available, please join. Would love to see you there. Should be a fun hour of power. And yeah, that's all from me. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days or evenings. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Jessica.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.